Hey guys, so 4 o'clock Eastern Time. Welcome. Today we're going to focus on something a little different. So over the last few other lives, I talked about, oh thanks Doris, I gotta change my hat. Once I get my hair cut, this is like a little ridiculous. Yeah. Once I get my hair cut, I'll ditch the hat. Tired of this hat. So today, we're going to focus a bit on something different, which is the strategies that a lot of social media, a lot of the social media experts I've been seeing online and what they mean. So a lot of people, they throw around words and it's very difficult for someone who's new to understand. When you're investing, people say things like dollar cost average or rebalancing or diversification. And they talk about cash flow or dividends or drop shipping. So it's kind of confusing. And this is what confused me when I was a teenager was there were so many terms. Everyone had their own way of making money, and some of them were legit, some of them were not. And it was very difficult to differentiate which ones were legit, whether they applied to me, and whether or not it would suit my personality. See, the biggest problem with making money or becoming wealthy isn't necessarily what you pick. Like some people are successful with sneaker flipping. Some people are good with sports cards. Some people are good with real estate, stocks, options trading. They're all viable. The problem in social media actually is that most people don't know what's involved and they don't know their own personality, like what they would like. So you could have the best strategy for making money, say drop shipping, but if it doesn't suit your personality, you're gonna have a hard time. It's the same thing. Real estate requires certain background traits, and if you don't have those traits and you just think I'm gonna go after the money, you're gonna have a bad time. Okay, so let's talk about what you need to think about. So when you're investing and you're just a blank slate, and it doesn't matter what anyone tells you in terms of this is good, this is bad. The things you should be thinking in your mind are, number one, is this a long-term or short-term play, right? When you're talking about sneaker flipping, it's a short-term play, right? So you're thinking, I buy something at a good price and I sell it. Or gold, I'm buying it at this price and then I have an exit in a year or 6 months or 6 minutes or whatever. So are you thinking, is this strategy a long-term or short-term? Second thing, which is sort of like 1B, is if it is short-term, most likely it won't make you wealthy or financially free unless you can transition it into a long-term passive method of making money. So let's make that clear. So when people talk about drop shipping or Shopify or sneaker flipping or affiliate marketing, you need to understand what that means. Now, what they're teaching you, is it short-term or long-term, right? Number one. So if it's short, you flip something, you make some money, you won't be able to become financially free with that unless you know how to transition it into a long-term passive flow of income, because then it'll just be like a job. You go in for the day, you get your pay, and you leave. You got to do it again and again. So that's the first thing. Short term or long term? What are they telling you? The second thing you need to think about when you're investing is, what are they focusing on? And there's about 5 things that they're focusing on. Number one, okay, so short or long. And the second thing that you need to determine is, are they talking about capital gains, cash flow, risk, insurance, or volatility? Okay? So usually when someone's talking on social media, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, Facebook, they're pitching something. They're pitching a way to make money. And the categories are going to fall under those 5. It's either going to be talking about cash flow, capital gains, volatility, risk, or insurance. And I'll have to be honest with you, most things that I've seen on social media, my brief stint of 8 months on social media, most of the gurus on social media are talking about capital gains, from what I've seen. They talk about, you do this, you wholesale a property, you throw it to an investor, you pocket 15 grand. That's short term, and that's capital gains, period. And 9 times out of 10 in social media, they pitch that because it's sexy, right? It is, it's attractive. You get a big fat check, 10, 20 grand, one shot, seems easy. But what they don't tell you, again, like I said, in social media, it's difficult to put a lot of information in there without doing live events or YouTubes to sort of flesh out what they're talking about. So in a 60-second TikTok or in a 5-image whatever on Instagram, you can only talk about things that are impactful to the viewer that will get you the views, right? And most people that I've seen, they focus on short-term capital gains. It's quick, it's sexy, you don't need much explanation, and it'll get you the viewers and the followers that they're looking for to pitch whatever they're pitching. And this is the ironic thing, right? So social media, the guys behind the successful money-making social media channels, they're pitching short-term capital gain strategies, and ironically, their customers feed them money so that they can have a long-term passive stream of income. That's the irony. So they're doing what I'm saying that people need to do, is learn how to transition short-term capital gains into long-term cash flowing passive income. That's the irony, actually. So, next thing. Again, the 5 things that you have to focus on when someone's pitching you on social media is, are they talking about capital gains? So when they're talking about drop shipping, flipping, that's capital gains. Are they talking about cash flow? If you listen to Grant Cardone, he's talking about cash flow from apartment buildings, how to build up cash flow every month. Again, he's pitching something else, which we won't go into, but he's talking cash flow. Robert Kiyosaki, when he talks about gold, silver, Bitcoin, that's capital gains. That's pure capital gains. And to be honest, they're going to focus on those two. Capital gains being more prevalent because, like I said, it's sexier to talk about capital gains. The 3 things that people don't talk about, they allude to, but they never talk about, is insurance. People don't talk about insurance because that's boring, right? So, for example, one method of insurance is options. Option trading in the stock market is for insurance. For example, you set a floor of the price where your stock is cashed out if it hits a certain price and it won't go any further. That's insurance. Or the other way, if the stock market gives you a profit and you have an option set up where cashes you out, again, also could put the stock to you, like you get the stock. It's insurance. You're setting a price where you feel comfortable. It's insurance from the price falling too low or the price going too high. So you either limit your losses or you cap your gains and you secure the gains. So that's insurance. But when people talk about options, 99% out of 100 on social media, they're talking about fast cash. Boom, you do the trade on the options on the 3rd Friday of the month. When the option contract expires, you pocket $4,000. Again, it's sexier. Talking about insurance is pretty boring. Like, I don't know how you would make options trading for insurance sexy. It would be like, hey, you can limit your losses. Great. So or you can cap your profit. Like, it's hard, right? So they want to do really quick stuff. The second thing that's really hard out of the five. So insurance, most people don't talk about that because it's boring. Volatility management. So volatility management is very interesting. Social media people know that 99% of the people are scared. Maybe not 99, but 95% of the people get scared by price movements. So volatility is actually a very relevant topic because people don't like prices going up and down. Entrepreneurs and investors don't really care because a low price in their specialty means that they get to purchase assets at a cheaper price, and a high price means they can cash out or do nothing. Right? It's primarily the masses that are afraid of volatility. So volatility is something that's interesting. They do talk about volatility in social media, but they don't call it volatility. They call it by other names, like risk. They say risk management. You manage your risk by setting something called a rebalancing or a schedule or asset allocation. So they talk about things like that, but that's not really. So you have to understand when they're talking about strategies like rebalancing or diversification, you need to understand what they're talking about. And they're always going to be talking about, again, the five things I covered at the beginning. They're either going to be talking about capital gains, cash flow, volatility, risk, or insurance, right? Insurance you probably don't have to think about because most people don't talk about it. I haven't seen I don't follow that many people who peddle insurance, so I don't see that much on social media. But volatility I see a bit. So they'll say like, oh, you need to focus on rebalancing. So for those who don't know, rebalancing is setting an asset allocation. For example, let's say you have a portfolio. Let's just go 0 to 100%. We're not going to put dollars on it. 0 to 100%, you have 80% in a low-fee U.S. index or an ETF, and 20% in government bonds. Let's keep it simple, 80-20 stock bonds. And so rebalancing is, oh, look it, after a few years, the stock market tends to go up, and now the stocks, because they've increased faster than the bonds, now take up 90% of the portfolio because they grow faster. So now you're at 90-10. And they say you need to reduce your risk by rebalancing. That means you need to change the portfolio so that it's 80% stocks again. So typically then you sell off some stocks, or you half sell and half buy some bonds, so you're back to the 80-20, right? And they call that as you're managing risk, which is false. It is actually volatility management. The reason why they start selling off when stocks are high is because they know that by and large, 95% of the population don't like price movements up and down. It gets very nervous for them. So they say sell off the stock so that you're back to a percentage that you're comfortable with, right? Again, that is not risk management. You are not managing risk that way. You are managing your personality, your psychology, and volatility, okay? So that has nothing to do with risk, but a lot of times people who talk about that, including those that work at the bank or at the financial institution, they'll confound the two terms. They'll say, you reduce your risk by doing this. That's not true, but for the purposes they're talking about, if they're talking about the risk of you selling because you're crying in your bed because the stock market went down, yeah, I guess that is technically true. They are protecting you from the risk of yourself doing something against your interests. So then we come to real risk. So real risk is not talked about generally. So again, insurance and risk, probably not, you're not going to see too much information about it because they're boring topics and there's no real good way to frame it in a 60-second TikTok that makes sense. Risk is a function of a person's knowledge on an asset, right? How well they know an asset. So we're talking about real estate. How well does this person understand the real estate they're looking at? A single family home, a fourplex, a multifamily or whatnot, knowledge. Number two is temperament. Like, are they scared that the multifamily dropped in price by half in the course of a year? Does that get them scared, right? If it gets them scared, they might do something dumb, right? And number three, which is price. In general, people really don't understand risk because they like it when the stock market goes up in price, which actually means it's riskier, right? When the price is high, it's riskier. It's sort of like anything else. When you buy something that's at a higher price, it's riskier. Oh, hold on, I gotta respond to a text. And I'm back, right? And price, when it's lower, it's actually less risk. So if I understand an asset and the price goes down, it is less risk for me. If I understand an asset and the price goes up, that's more risk for me. And that's a boring topic. No one likes talking about that. Right, so if you don't understand an asset, it's probably just going to be risky in general, period. So let's talk about some of the strategies that people talk about and where they fall in the spectrum that I announced earlier. So again, when you're listening to a financial planner, an advisor, or someone at the bank, or your best friend, or your uncle, and they're talking about investing or entrepreneurship or anything to do with money, it's going to fall under two umbrellas. The first one, is this a short-term or long-term play? Are they describing something that I need to do over and over and over again because it's short-term? Or are they talking about something where I do once, it's passive income, and I don't have to do anything outside of monitoring and keeping track of my accounts, right? Number two, what are they describing? What are they describing to me? Are they describing capital gains, cash flow, risk mitigation, volatility mitigation, or insurance? Most likely they're not. Again, they're not talking about insurance or risk management because most people don't. It's boring. So let's talk about diversification. Diversification does not involve capital gains or cash flow. That's a great question, actually. There is literature about volatility versus risk. Maybe I'll make a video about that, but I have a feeling I'll get like 3 views. But so when you're talking about, let's talk about the different strategies that are pitched to you when you walk into a bank. When you walk into a bank, Fidelity, Janus, Templeton, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, TD Bank, Bank of Montreal, whatever, and you want to talk with an advisor or planner, they're going to pitch you something, okay? So they're going to pitch diversification. So diversification has nothing to do with capital gains, nothing to do with cash flow. It is a pure, that is one of the only types of risk management, I think, that is valuable because it's easy to understand and it's effective. So diversification is a broad topic. Warren Buffett has said diversification is protection against ignorance, which is true. So for example, if I don't know which particular company is great in the stock market of 8,000 stocks or 12,000 stocks, if I don't know which one or how to identify the ones that have value, then I'll buy the whole thing. I buy a low-fee US index, a ETF or mutual fund, and I protect myself against single stock risk, right? You don't protect yourself against volatility because the price can go up or down. But in general, because the stock market has always recovered from downturns since 2018-02 for 200 years, you're probably good. So diversification is a risk management tool. However, if you're buying an individual property, there's minimal diversification there. So let's say you're looking at a duplex or a threeplex. There's very little diversification, almost none. And so that's high risk unless you increase the knowledge of the product and of the process of buying rental properties, right? So if you don't have diversification, for example, like a REIT, REIT's not really a real estate, but that's a different story. then buying an individual property increases risk unless you know how to mitigate that. So when financial planners talk about diversification, by and large, if they're focusing on a low-fee U.S. index, mutual fund or ETF, they're talking about risk management, and I could totally buy that. I get that. That is risk management. Next, rebalancing. Rebalancing, like I said before, if you have 70% stocks and 30% bonds, stock market goes up. Now all of a sudden your portfolio is 80 or 90% stocks and 10% bonds. They rebalance to sell off some of your stocks so that you're down to 70% allocation, 30% bond allocation. That is, they market that as risk management, but that's volatility management. They are managing volatility because they know from your answering of the questionnaires that they give you and all that stuff, that you cannot handle price drops associated with a 90% stock allocation, right? That you will panic and you'll do something crazy like sell everything. So they push you down. Like my dad is like a 50-50 guy. So after a long time of managing his money, I've learned that his temperament to handle volatility is terrible, like bad. So myself, I don't really care. I know volatility goes away. I know the stock market's gone up for 200 years. I'm also a lot younger. I'm not in my 80s. So I don't really care about volatility. I'll just plow more into the index when the prices are low. So my dad needs 50-50 because the volatility will increase his chances of doing something reckless. Bonjour. Next, they talk about asset allocation. You need to have a certain asset allocation. This I disagree with. Again, I'll talk about someone like my dad and someone like myself. What is asset allocation? Asset allocation is a planner or some kind of guru on social media that tells you you need to have 70% in stocks, 20% in bonds, and 10% in cash, or something like that. Some kind of allocation that's very specific, like a predetermined allocation, like a predetermined. I don't do that, okay? If I started from scratch, like from my dad, that's perfect because he can't handle the stock market, so set an allocation for him and he's good. For myself, if I was starting from scratch, knowing my temperament and my knowledge level, and if I had money, it would be allocated to a low-fee U.S. index, 100% outside of my emergency fund and storage fund. It would just be, boom, I'm in the low-fee U.S. index. Volatility management doesn't bother me. I don't need to set an asset allocation because if the stock price drops or the index drops, I'll just buy more of it. It's not really a concern for me. So again, asset allocation is how they manage volatility. It's not risk, it's volatility because people panic. Next, when they talk about stocks or real estate. So this is where people get confused. So I see this on social media a lot. People talk about stocks like, oh, there's going to be a stock split. Oh, Tesla's at a new high. Apple's at a new high. Dividend payout. So these are all terms are thrown out there as a way of making the viewer excited about making money. Okay, so again, you got the 5 buckets, and I'll stick with the 3 that are the most common. Capital gains, cash flow, or volatility. So when you're talking about, Tesla split, is that cash flow? No. Is that capital gains? No. Is that volatility management? Not really. What is it? It's actually nothing. I've never seen so many words describing nothing than a stock split. Okay, so to explain what a stock split is, let's say a company's shares is like a pizza. Everyone has a slice. So everyone in this room here watching a video, you, me, the next person next to you in the chat, we all share a pizza called Tesla or Apple or Berkshire Hathaway. We all have a slice. That's my slice. I am a shareholder. And a stock split is they take your slice and they cut it in half. And that's really nothing because you haven't gotten more pizza. You haven't gotten more cheese on the pizza. You haven't gotten less pizza. It's just taking your pizza and cutting it in half. It's really just, I've never seen so many people talk about a stock split or about nothing. But for some reason, usually those who are new to investing, that's exciting. Because instead of having one share, you have two shares. Never mind that they're at half the price. So it's really just taking your pizza slice and cutting it in half and then making a big deal out of that. Like, look at this, I got two pizzas. I had one, now I have two. Yeah, okay, great. Next thing they talk about, all-time highs. What's all-time highs talking about? Are they talking about cash flow? No, that hasn't changed. Are they talking about capital gains? Maybe, if you want to sell. Maybe they're giving an indication that it's time to sell, price is high, maybe. Are they talking about volatility management? Could be, could be. But usually they're just talking about a high price, which again is nothing. Like so many channels on TikTok and Instagram, no offense to the creators, but they do a lot of videos on nothing. Like if you look at all my videos, and I have like 1,300, I never talk about a stock reaching an all-time high or a stock split because it's like talking about nothing. But people get excited, right? Oh my God, I had 400 shares, I have 800 now, or the price hit an all-time high, and like, so what? Like, unless I'm looking to sell it to fund my kids' education or buy a boat, it doesn't really do anything for me, right? I mean, the stock market has gone up for 200 years. It hit all-time highs all through that period. So the ironic thing is that if you look at the 200 plus history of the stock market or of stocks since 1802, can I put that on screen? Actually, I can't. I'm going to put that on screen here. Here it is. Okay. So I know a lot of people who've been on my lives have seen this. If you look at the stock market line, which is the top one, by the way, it's hit all-time highs virtually every year, which means in aggregate, all the stocks in the index hit all-time highs regularly. It's not always up, right? I mean, you can see some downturns there, which is why I talk about a storage fund and investing more when the markets are down. But so many social media creators create videos about all-time highs. Like, that's kind of the history of stocks over 2 centuries. All-time highs is the history of the stock market. Okay? Yeah, you're welcome, Doris. And stock splits, again, if a shareholder is considered someone who owns a slice of a pizza and the pizza is a company, everyone has the same slice. A split means you take your slice that you own and you cut it in half, or whatever ratio they do. It's usually 2 for 1, 3 for 2. I don't know. They do, whatever, right? So it's really a nothing event because everything's cut in half. The price is cut in half. The profit represented by each share is cut in half. Splits in general are not desirable. Okay, if anything, stock splits are not desirable. Okay, so the reason why is because it increases in general, when you have more of something, it's worth more or less. Less, right? So if you're selling something and there's a larger quantity of it, this is why money is almost worthless, right? Because there's so much of it and it's like printed on demand. So the higher the number of something, the worse it is. The more common it is, the less rare it is. So what happens if you take 1 billion shares, you do a 2 for 1 stock split, and now you have 2 billion shares floating out there? What are the odds that that's worth more? It's not. The time the split happens, it's a non-event, right? But in general, you do not want more shares available. The reason why companies split, and again, this goes into why they do it. They do it is because it attracts attention to the company and it makes people want to become shareholders. It's really just for attracting people to become shareholders. It makes the price more quote unquote affordable, right? So if you had a share that never split, Like Berkshire Hathaway has never split, right? Never split. Each share is like $300,000 each, right? Never split. If it kept splitting, it would be like whatever, a normal price of whatever, right? So it never splits, and most people won't be able to afford that. So they'll ignore it. And at that point, some companies don't like that, so they'll regularly split if the price gets too high to get attention and to get more investors involved in their business. Okay, so let's talk about real estate. Oh no, let's talk about options. We're still on stocks. So options. So content creators who talk about options. 9 times out of 10, they're talking about capital gains. Okay, they're talking about executing a strategy, a straddle, a put, a call, some kind of strategy with options. And when the option expires on the 3rd Friday of a certain month, they get cash because they predicted the movement correctly. Again, a stock can go up, down, sideways, any combination of that. And if you predict it right and you limit your losses, you make some money. So when people on social media are talking about options, 9 times out of 10, 99% out of 100, they're talking about capital gains. They're not talking about cash flow, right? They're not talking about automating a process where options are written with a certain algorithm that they execute passively to earn cash flow. And again, if a content creator is not talking about passive income, you will not ever be financially free, ever, okay? So in order to be financially free, all these capital gain techniques that are shown on Instagram and TikTok need to transition into passive income. Otherwise, you're just working. You're just working at a different job, right? So let's say you had a job and then you're able to do this successfully with options. Now you're at home doing it with options. So you're just still working. You're just doing something different for money. And that won't make you financially free because all those capital gains will be taxed. You'll have to start from square one every day, and you have to do it over and over until you find out how to transition that into passive. So that's pretty much what they talk about in stocks. They talk about splits, all-time highs, and options. Now, all the social media, I wouldn't say, I don't want to keep saying all, okay? I haven't seen every social media content out there, but the ones that I bump into, again, they focus on capital gains because it's sexy. So with real estate, this is what I've seen on real estate. Real estate, I've seen wholesaling, I've seen fix and flip, very little on notes, probably because it's a complicated subject, and passive income only cursively. Like they'll mention like, oh, buy rentals and you'll have passive income, but they don't really go into, well, how do you know when a property will generate passive income? That's kind of a valid question, right? I mean, you need to know how. Like if I look at the thousands of properties around me, how do I know if that's going to generate money passively? So they don't really go into that too much, but they go into wholesaling. Again, 99% of the content that I've seen, they talk about capital gains because it's sexy. So fix and flip is very obvious. I bought this house for 50 grand. I put in paint, carpet. I took out the air conditioner and I put in a new hot water tank, and I fixed up the landscaping. I got a new tenant in at a higher rent because now the property's nice. And I refied it. I went to the bank and I pulled out 30 grand. And a tenant went in there and is covering all my costs, and I'm going to do it again. Again, short term, remember, everything that's pitched online, it's either short term or long term. 99 times out of 10 is short term, and flipping is short term. You get that money once, you do all that work, and guess what? Like I said before, you got to do it again and again. So some people actually, if you go to some of the large real estate conferences like in Florida, like David Lindahl's conferences and stuff like that, you will meet like really big time investors that have systematized fixing and flipping. Like they have transformed a short-term flip into long-term capital gains. They have a machine. They have employees. They have people to cold call the land registry to find opportunities, to deal with the divorce lawyers, to find properties that are in distress. fix them up, buy them at a low price, flip them, and it's like a machine. It's like a machine. So they're financially free, like way beyond financially free, because they have converted a otherwise short-term capital gain oriented task into a machine that produces passive income. Same thing when Gary Vaynerchuk talks about sports cards. He loves it, and I no doubt you can make money in it. But again, he's talking about short-term capital gains, and then if you can find a system where you can keep flipping things like that, then it becomes something that can actually make you financially free. But other than that, it's another short-term capital gain-oriented procedure. So real estate, that's fixing and flipping. What else are we talking about? Wholesaling. So wholesaling, for people who don't know, just think of this. When someone says, oh, I wholesale real estate, the easy way to understand what wholesaling real estate is I do everything that a real estate agent does, but I don't have a license. That's wholesaling in a nutshell. So a wholesaler, except their focus is a bit different. So I'll explain the differences here now. A real estate agent right now doesn't care if you're buying or selling. They just want a commission, right? So either they're selling to a buyer or they're convincing a seller that they should list with them. So that's what a licensed real estate agent wants to do. A wholesaler does something similar, but with a little difference. They're looking for a distressed property, a property that's priced less than what it should be because there's something around it. It's in disrepair, or it's part of a estate sale. You know, the person who lived there for 60 years and they passed away. It's a separation. Husband and wife decided to separate. They don't want this anchor around their neck. They're just looking to get rid of it. So the wholesaler is looking for these specific types of opportunity. But in general, a wholesaler is a real estate agent without a license. So they're finding by any means necessary bandit signs. You've seen those bandit signs when you drive around. I buy homes for cash or whatever. Those are bandit signs. There's like a wholesaler could put out thousands of them in order to hit a certain percentage, right? Google AdWords. So they're looking for volume because it's very hard to find a distressed sale. Like you need volume, right? So you'll see that. And so they're looking for that opportunity, and without putting money down or putting very little down, they'll get that property under contract. They'll say to an investor like myself or someone else, I got this property, comparable houses, if fixed up, are worth 70% more. Take it off my hands. Obviously, I'm not going to sell it to you for full price because it's distressed. But if you give me $5,000, $10,000, whatever, 10% above what I paid, I'm good. And they get cash and they go, right? So they shorten that process a lot in social media because it's just, the process is just grueling. Anyway. And then they show a big fat check where the wholesaler pockets, I don't know, like 90 grand, all right, on whatever, or 3 checks of 40 or something like that. But that's essentially what they're doing. So they're talking about, again, capital gains, all right, capital gains. They do it one time. They got to do it again and again. You got to keep throwing out those bandit signs, you know, checking your mailbox, making sure those AdWords are up to date, refreshed. You're following up on leads and you're doing all that stuff. Okay, let's talk about dollar cost averaging. What is dollar cost averaging? Dollar cost averaging happens both in real estate and in stocks. Dollar cost averaging is buying, instead of buying a lump sum of an asset, like a low-fee U.S. index. Let's say you have $12,000. You want to invest into an asset, low-fee U.S. index. Or you can say $1.2 million and you want to buy real estate. So instead of dumping all your money, $1.2 million, in a multifamily property, you decide to buy 12 properties for $100,000 in a condo complex. You buy 12 condos in a complex, right? It's not quite the same, but you want to diversify because if there's a flood in your apartment, it's going to affect like the second and third floor, and then you're going to have to shut down like a third of the building. And in a condo, if you have that problem, it only affects really one unit, and then the other 11 can go whatever you're trying to do. Same thing for the stock market. You have $12,000. Instead of dumping it all in on day one, you put $1,000 a month for 12 months, right? So that is risk mitigation. That's mitigating risk. That's one of the few topics that I've seen that focus on talking about risk, right, is diversification. And that's dollar cost averaging. Well, let me clarify that. So dollar cost averaging in itself, the diversification achieved through dollar cost averaging may reduce risk, but not necessarily. So this is like splitting hairs here. I don't know if anyone will care if I'm splitting hairs, but dollar cost averaging is the process of deploying capital. Instead of one shot, you split up the money, right? Diversification is somewhat related because if you're buying a low fee index, right, you're diversified across all the stocks. So those are different things. So people talk about diversification, that's risk mitigation. People talking about dollar cost averaging, it is a method to deploy capital. Okay, it's a method to deploy capital. Dollar cost averaging has been found by Vanguard in a long-term study to be less beneficial than a lump sum. Investors who have a long investing horizon are better if they just dump it in at once and forget about it, like this. And here, like that. Okay? Or like this. So you can see here, people who just dump it in and forget about it generally do better if they start earlier. So dollar cost averaging, I don't dollar cost average. Like I don't say like I'm gonna buy stocks like on every month. That's what I'm gonna do. I used to do that when I worked, right? Because it's automatic, I didn't have to think about it. So I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. I'm more selective. I have probably bought stocks every year since I started investing in the 90s. Like every year I've probably bought stocks, but it's not on a schedule like some people say, like every month, every quarter or something like that. I usually buy probably once a year. If there's a downturn or something, I might buy twice. The only difference is instead of chunking in 1/12 of what I want to invest, I will just lump it. I'll just take a lump of cash and just boom, and then forget about it. And that's my investment for the year. So that's, again, dollar cost averaging versus lump sum. So dividends, that's very interesting. So when people talk about dividends, they're like, oh, check out my dividend check. And dividends is one of the few topics where it's cash flow. They're just talking about cash flow. That's pretty obvious. When someone does a dividend-focused strategy, they're talking cash flow, right? That's obvious. Dividends, I don't focus on dividends because dividends aren't free money. The problem with dividends is that on social media, they're portrayed as free money. I buy stocks and guess what? I get a check every quarter. Dividends are not free money. So, for example, when a company has money, they're profitable. They have money. So they sell something, they pay their expenses, they pay their financing, and they have a profit, right? They have some money. They have only 4 things that they can do. A company only has 4 things they can do with money, with profit, okay? Number 1, and the best use of the money is do more of the same. Let's say you have Apple or Tesla, and Tesla's like, wow, when I make this car, like people buy it, and they buy a lot of it. Like if I was able to make more of these cars, I would make more money. So the first thing that they can do with money is do more of the same. Increase production or go into a geography where they can do more of what they're doing. If Coca-Cola has done well in this part of the state, we're gonna go into that part of the state and do the same and make more money. So, for example, like I said, number 2, what can a company do? So number 1, they can do more of what they're doing. They can reinvest the money back into the business. Number 2, they can make an acquisition, right? Hey, whatever, Joe Cola opened up next door and people seem to like them, and we don't want to compete with them. We'll just buy them out. And now we own Joe Cola, except that, we'll keep the name Joe Cola, but all the benefits of the business go to Coca-Cola. So acquisition is number two. Number two, the second thing that a company can do with money is acquire a growing business. Number three, what can they do? They can buy back their own stock. Okay? So buying back your own stock is the opposite of diluting. So if you have 10 shares and you want to buy back your own stock because it's a good price, you reduce the number of shares to 9 by buying it off the open market. Someone wants to sell it, they take it off the market. They buy it from that shareholder and then they retire the share. Now the company is encapsulated in 9 shares, right? So now the company becomes more valuable because there's less shares outstanding. So they can buy back if they feel that their company is at a discount, right? So their company is at a good price. Now, share buybacks are kind of tricky. It's very difficult for the layperson to know if a share buyback is reasonable or not because we're not privy to the decision making that they're using. Like, we're not looking at their discounted cash flow calculations or their projections or their, any of that stuff. So we're just hoping that they're doing the right thing. But in general, in broad terms, share buybacks are generally good unless the executives are like ridiculously incompetent and are paying any price to buy back their own shares, which, usually incompetent people won't do that because it costs money and they would rather put it in their pockets. So that's beside the point. Rant over. Okay, number 4 is pay a dividend. The fourth and last thing that a company can do with their money is pay a dividend. So that immediately implies that the first 3 were not attractive. Reinvesting was not attractive enough. Acquiring anything was not attractive enough, or they couldn't find anybody. Number 3, buying back their own stock. Maybe the share was too high. The share price was too high, so they don't want to do that. So the last thing to do is return the capital to shareholders. So they pay out a dividend. It's not good or bad. I just don't focus on that type of income because I would rather, and everyone would rather, if you had a choice, as an investor, if you had a choice, you would want the company to say, our business is gangbusters. We're taking the profits and reinvesting it so we can grow faster, right? And that's what a lot of people do if they believe in a company. They get their dividend and they drip it, dividend reinvestment, back into the company because they want the company to have it. They're like, you've been doing such a great job at growing the business and increasing my wealth. I want you to have this distribution, this dividend, and I want you to run with it, right? So that's why people take their dividends and they reinvest it back. Because what they're saying is I want you to do more of number 1, which is reinvest in the business, okay? A company like Berkshire Hathaway doesn't pay a dividend because they feel like, listen, we pay you a dividend, maybe you want it, maybe you don't, but we know we can grow the business, so we're just going to keep it and do that, right? And they've been doing that for 50 years, slowing down now because the thing is a giant monster. And how big can you grow when you're one of the top 10 companies on the planet? But anyway, that's beside the point. Okay, so dividends are something that's very interesting that people talk about. Again, just like stock splits and all-time highs, people are like, oh my God, I got a dividend. It's you would rather the company was growing, and you're going to reinvest the dividend if you want to keep it going. So, okay, buy more during downturns. No one ever talks about this. I'm the only one that seems to talk about this. I haven't seen many people on social media talk about it. They talk about stay the course. Stay the course is compounding. So it's deferred capital gains. They're talking about, listen, the stock market, as you can see here, go back to where I was. You can see here the stock market has gone up for 200 years. Stay the course means, listen, the last 200 years is probably going to be similar to the next 20. And whether or not you're alive doesn't matter. The stock market is going to keep going up. So you might as well stay the course and benefit from those deferred capital gains. Or capital gains in general. Deferred tax on capital gains. So they're talking about staying the course. When John Bogle talked about stay the course, he's talking about long-term passive compounding of capital gains. He's not talking about cash flow. There's no cash coming out of here, right? You're not selling anything. You're not getting a distribution. I guess technically you are, because a certain fraction of the low-fee U.S. index is paid out at dividends. But if you're going to push it back in and reinvest it, you're focused on capital gains. Like if you're going to take that dividend and spend it on a vacation, then okay, you're getting some cash flow, okay, right? But in general, stay the course refers to you staying the course, or an investor staying the course, so that compounding lasts over a long time. And that's pure passive, but capital gains. Again, it's almost impossible to become financially free unless it's number one, passive, number one, long-term, number two, passive, and number three, can cover your expenses, either through capital gains or cash flow. Those three things are necessary for financial freedom. It's like saying, what makes a good vacation? Well, I need the sun, I need the beach, and I need oxygen. Right? Like, I mean, there's baselines, right? With one of the three missing, I might not have a good vacation, right? So for financial freedom, whatever method is pitched that you're bought into, right? It has to be long-term, it has to be passive, otherwise it's called work. If it's not passive, it's work. So that can't be financial freedom. Number two is passive. Number three, it needs to cover your expenses. Whether it's capital gains, selling off capital gains to pay for expenses, or cash flow, paying for your expenses. Those are the three necessary criteria for financial freedom, just like a sun, a beach, and oxygen is important for me for a vacation. All right, that's about it. Hopefully that makes some sense. I'm going to do a quick recap. So the quick recap is when you watch social media, YouTube, one thing I love about social media, since I've been on at the beginning of the year, is that there's a lot of information, like so much. But I can quickly categorize it because I've been doing this for a while. So even though I haven't been on social media, all the methods of making money are pretty simple. They're not that hard. And again, all the methods of making money fall into two buckets: long-term, short-term. Number one, know that 99% of social media is based on short-term, because short-term's sexy, okay? Short-term ways of making money. How to make money quick. How to make $1,000 right away. How I made $1,000 on the weekend. How I flipped this card and made $5,000. So it's short-term, it's attractive. Short or long-term. The next thing, the second part of the equation, when you're looking at YouTube videos, podcasts, whatever, what are they focused on? Capital gains, cash flow, volatility, risk, or insurance. 9 times out of 10, it's not cash flow. It's always capital gains. Like 9 times out of 10 of the videos that I watch are short-term capital gains. Won't get you financially free, ever. At most, it's called a job. Because if you're making short-term capital gains, that's just a job. It's like me going on Kijiji or Craigslist, buying something low and flipping it, but I got to do it again. So hopefully that helps. Anyway, any questions? That was my talk for today. I don't even know how long I've been on, actually. I'll take any questions or any deals. If not, I'll probably go live on TikTok, just because I wish I knew how to simulcast. That's what I need to learn how to do. So, again, good luck with the investing. DM me, follow me. If you have any questions, I answer as soon as I can. Sometimes it's tougher than other times. My book's coming out on September 1st. Click on the link in my profile. You'll see my book, Financial Freedom Now. I go over these concepts of understanding money. And one of the biggest problems I had when I was growing up and learning about money was that no one would tell me this stuff. Like, I didn't have anyone to tell me long-term, short-term, what are we talking about? Is this an easy way to make money? Is this a hard way to make money? No one would tell me. Yes, who asked that? BN James. Yes, I believe you can actually go to my profile, and somewhere on there, IGTV, what I like about Instagram is that it actually it keeps all my live events. TikTok just sort of gets rid of it into the ether. If we have the Kindle pre-ordered, will we be able to print a copy later? I'm not sure. I think Amazon, as far as I understand it, Amazon says if you pre-ordered my book, it's pushed to your Kindle app or your Kindle automatically, but the paperback version has to be purchased separately. So if you want the paperback, I'm going to launch it shortly after the Kindle because I can't do it before. Amazon said I need to upload the manuscript, launch the Kindle, and then I can use the same manuscript and launch the paperback. So I'm going to just follow their process and hopefully it works. I've already uploaded my manuscript, so it's there. Once September 1st comes, it'll be pushed out. Pretty excited. That's awesome. And that's about it. All right, guys. Thanks for the questions and thanks for joining me. Take care.